Well, if you're new, my name is Tim. I'm the lead pastor, and I just want to say thank you for all the love and the support and just even that moment we had today. I really feel loved and honored. I appreciate that. This is kind of a big week for me personally, as my new book, Don't Wing It, comes out on Tuesday of this week officially. And I'm going to share a message today, and it's not from this book, it's from a different book, but I would like to just say a couple words because really I'm sharing this message I want to share today is it just kind of follows the inspiration of why I wrote this particular book. Just to give you a little insight, it's the tagline is the essentials for money, dating, taxes, and everything else. So it's I'm just gonna say it right now, it's a book to help especially young people figure life out. That's kind of and what inspired me to write this is I have two grown daughters who are married, they're young adults, and I will get text messages from them. Can you help fix this? What do I do with this tax form? I'm not sure what I'm supposed to pick for insurance here. Any parents know what I'm talking about? Get those conversations. And it dawned on me, and I thought, man, I wish there was a good resource to help people figure out the complexity of life, especially those who are younger. And I don't know if it's because of the season of life that I'm in, and maybe I've lived a little bit of life, but looking back, I realize now some of the important decisions that we made when we were really young, my wife and I can see some of the big mistakes that I've made in life have culminated to the life that I'm getting to live today. And I think a lot of times we don't put enough emphasis on that, especially in our early years. And so that's kind of the inspiration. I will say this book is incredibly practical. It covers stuff like credit cards and budgets and boring stuff like that, cars and technology and insurance and dating and parenthood. I mean, it kind of covers a little bit of what I've just experienced for the last, say, 30 years of life. I just kind of put it into a really helpful resource. And one of the reasons why I did that is because I am passionate, not just for my own daughters, but for that generation. I am passionate for the youngest generation that is growing up right now, that I just believe that even small decisions that we make today have huge implications in the life that we live later on. And it is vital. And what I've discovered is that school does not really prepare you for life. You all know that to be true? Like school listen, if you're a teacher, I'm not hating on it. I think what you do is incredibly important. But school, in my opinion, teaches us how to learn, but doesn't really prepare us for the complexities of life and having to figure out what it's like to manage your way through life. And so that's kind of what inspired me to just take some of the wisdom, things I've learned, both as a parent and a pastor, and kind of just put it into a simple resource. And I wanted this to also be for parents and grandparents. I have had grandparents who said, I want this for my growing grandkids, my older grandkids, is to create conversations and help them figure out the life that they want. Because listen to me, here's what I have figured out. If you're not careful, life will pass you by and you won't even notice it. I'm just telling you something I've experienced. Life is moving so fast. I'm telling you, life will pass you by like a Lamborghini on the Autobahn. It will just zoom right past you. I'm just saying this because there was a time when I was younger and I was probably 20 years old, and I thought to myself, I got the whole world, I got like eternity in front of me. Well, I kind of do, but I meant like here on earth, you know? Like, I've got forever. I remember when I was 20 thinking 40-year-olds were over the hill. Like, they got one foot in the grave. They're about dead, aren't they? Then I turned 40 and went, whoops, I kind of don't feel that way. And here's the thing that probably a lot of us, especially if you've lived life, recognize, and that is that time is really weird. Like, I can't figure it out. It's strange. I know it's like supposed to be really consistent, and seconds are seconds, and minutes are minutes, and days are days. But have you ever noticed that time feels different than that at times? Like, there are moments when you're stuck at work, and have you ever had one of those days where it feels like time is not moving at all, and seconds feel like minutes or hours, and you feel like you just worked for hours at your desk, and then you'll look up and realize 6 minutes went by, and you're like, I'm stuck in work hell, and I can't get out of it. Anybody ever felt like that? Come on. That time, it just like comes to a screeching halt, and you're like, can we just please move on? But then I've also experienced the other side. And oftentimes it's not in like minutes and hours and days, but it feels like seasons and years can just be gone in a moment. Like it'll feel like you just blink and all of a sudden, like years just went by. And some of you parents maybe recognize this, because I remember when we brought our daughters home from the hospital. I remember what it was like being a new parent and having these little girls that were just like staring at you and dependent upon you, and your whole world changed, and you didn't know how to be a parent. I didn't know what, I just didn't want to break them, and I didn't want to drop them, and I didn't want to mess them up. And I remember thinking like, I don't know how to do this, and I can just still picture them when they're this little, and then it's like you blink, and next thing you know, you're sticking them on a school bus to go off to kindergarten, and as soon as the bus leaves, you just weep like a little baby yourself, because you're like, oh my gosh, they're growing up so fast. And trust me, one of these days, you'll close your eyes and wake up, and your kids will be moved out of the house, and you'll have a 2-year-old grandson named Cohen. Yeah, I mean, maybe it won't be named Cohen, I don't know. But I'm just telling you my life. Like, it almost feels like we're living in a simulation, like the Matrix. Like, I can't figure this out. And life just goes by so incredibly fast. And in my mind, I'm still like 22. Anybody that's older will tell you this. Like, we get older, but in my mind, I'm still 22. That's why we try dumb things when we get older and then we pay for it. Like in my mind, I'm still young and I could do this, I could do that, but then I wake up and everything hurts and aches when I get out of bed, and it takes me so much longer to recover from doing things, and people want me to help move, and I'm like, I don't know if my back can handle any more moving. This is life. This is, for those of you who are younger, this is what you have to look forward to. But life is moving so quickly. And I don't know if maybe what inspired me really, to write this was just finding myself on the other end of the spectrum where I don't maybe have years and years or decades and decades as much in front of me like I did when I was younger. And realizing if I could share anything that I've learned with the next generation, I want to do that, because I think life is really precious. But I'm telling you something, it's going faster than you can imagine. I'm not the only one that thinks this way. In fact, there's a small little book in the New Testament, a letter written by a guy named James, who was a half-brother of Jesus. And I'd love to just share a few words that he said in chapter 4. And when I read this, I'm convinced that James has experienced some life at this point. I'm convinced, like, I don't know how you read the Bible, but when I read this, I kind of picture an old man, whereas I know James probably was martyred for his faith, but he seems like writing as somebody who's experienced life. And he says these words in James 4, verse 13. He says, now listen, you who say, today or tomorrow we'll go to this or that city, spend a year there, carry on business, and make money. You got all these grand plans, right? I picture James talking to the young whippersnappers with all this energy. That's how he would call them. In verse 14, he says, why? You do not even know what will happen tomorrow. He says, what is your life? You are a what? Would you all say it out loud? You're a vapor. You're a mist that appears for a little while and then it vanishes. This is how I really think James was an older guy. He's like talking to all the young people with all this energy and all these plans. And he says, why are you making all these plans? You don't even know if you're gonna live tomorrow. And your lifetime is going so fast, it's a vapor, it's a mist. It's here today, gone tomorrow. And I'm thinking to myself, James, you are so encouraging, so positive. You need to take your Lipitor and you need to settle down. But I think this is James, who maybe has lived a little bit. I kind of identify with him a little bit. And I realize, like, life is just, I can't stop it and slow it down. There's moments, when we have our kids and they're growing up, and there's different seasons where you're like, I don't want you to change anymore. I don't want you to keep growing. I don't want you. And then they just keep doing it. And you feel like, I want to just hold on to this youth, and I don't want these wrinkles, and I don't want this. But then it just keeps going. And it's just, life just keeps moving. And James is trying to help us see that life is really short. And then he says something else that, as he kind of is continuing on in this geriatric rant, he says this in verse 15. He says, instead, here's what you ought to say. If it is the Lord's will, we will live and do this or that. But as it is, you boast in your arrogant schemes, and all such boasting is evil. In other words, he's saying, you've got all kinds of plans for you. You know what you're gonna do for your life. I'm gonna create this, we're gonna start this, we're gonna build this, we're gonna make this much, we're gonna achieve this kind of success, we're gonna live in this. And he says, you've got all these plans that you've created for yourself, but do you ever pause and say, God, what is your will for my life? And then he says something really sobering in verse 17. He says this, if anyone then knows the what? You all say that word, knows the, say it again, knows the, if anyone knows the good they ought to do and doesn't do it, it's what? It's a sin for them. Wow. You see, James is saying that, like, if God created you and me for a reason and a purpose, and that purpose is to do good in this world, if we don't actually step into the purpose and the good things that God has created us to do, it's actually sin for us. I know this is kind of crazy because most of the time when we think of sin, we think of the top 10 commandments, we think of all the things that we're not supposed to do, right? Don't cheat, don't murder, don't steal, don't do this. But James gets kind of subjective here. And he says, yeah, but your life is like a mist, a vapor. It's here today, it's gone tomorrow. He says, all these plans that you make, if you don't do the good that God created you to do, it's actually sin for you. That's heavy. Some of you might be going, well, how do I know? How do I know how to do that? How do I know what direction I'm supposed to move in my life? How am I supposed to build something and know that I'm doing good? I understand, that's tough. That's probably why I wrote this book, is because I want passionately, and I believe this passionately for especially young people, to understand that there is intention and purpose for your life. But can I just say, that's not just for young people, that's also for a 68-year-old. There's meaning and purpose for your life. There's something that God created you and me to do. And when we make this life about ourselves, we actually, James would say, we miss the bigger reason and calling that God created us. And when we know what we're supposed to do, the good we're supposed to do, and we don't do it, it's actually a sin for us. And I just came to remind some of us that there is a future yet to be created for every single one of us. And God has deposited specific things in each of us to create that future. And here's what I want you to hear me say, especially if you are older. Your future is not yet written. And I don't care if you're 55, 63, 78, 23, 18, 15. We all have a future to create. And it is not too late to start creating that future, because the decisions you make today will determine the future you live tomorrow. It'll determine the good that you can create. Where I see James align with Jesus is in Matthew 25. If you have a Bible with you, that's where I'm gonna spend the rest of our time. In Matthew chapter 25, Jesus tells a parable, which is just a story. It's a creative way to explain a truth. And in this, Jesus kind of gives us his perspective, God's perspective on life. In fact, he shares in this chapter 3 different stories. We're gonna look at one of them that all deal with the idea of the kingdom of heaven. Now, whenever we hear kingdom of heaven, I think what most of us naturally think is, oh, he's talking about a place. Most of us think we die, we end up in heaven. That's what we want to be, and some place with golden streets and pearly gates and angels flying around, and it's just a beautiful place to retire. That's not what Jesus is talking about when he talks about the kingdom of heaven. Whenever he talks about the kingdom of heaven, he's rarely talking about a place. He's almost always talking about a greater reality than we see here on earth. He's talking about God's perspective on life. And the truth is this, our perspective is quite limited. Our perspective on earth, we live in a sinful, broken planet, a broken world, and everything that we see does not line up with how God sees it, including ourselves. And so in this parable, Jesus tries to unpack his reality for our lives. In verse 14, here's the story. He says again, it will be like a man going on a journey who called his servants and entrusted his wealth to them. To one he gave 5 bags of gold, to another 2 bags, and to another 1 bag, each according to his ability. Then he went on his journey. The man who had received 5 bags of gold went at once and put his money to work, and he gained 5 bags more. So also the one with 2 bags of gold gained 2 more. But the man who had received 1 bag went off, he dug a hole in the ground and hid his master's money. This is probably a story, if you've been around church, you maybe are somewhat familiar with. Jesus tells a parable to explain a greater reality of a master who has a lot of wealth. He's going away on a business trip for an indeterminate amount of time. And so he entrusts all of his wealth to 3 of his primary leaders, 3 of his servants. And one guy, gives him 5 bags of gold. Another guy gets 2 bags of gold. And then another guy gets 1 bag of gold. And I don't know how you kind of think about this, but whenever I read a story like this, the first thought that always pops in my mind was, that seems so unfair. Like, couldn't you divide this up a little bit better than that? Like, how are you giving one guy 5 bags, and you're giving another guy 2 bags, and one guy only gets 1 bag? And I look at this and I go, that doesn't seem very fair of the master to do. But I think it's because I often read into the story. I don't know how you do this, but I project and read into the story myself as the guy who only got 1 bag. Like, I don't know how you view yourself, but I'll just, in a real sobering way, I feel like the guy who got 1 bag in life. And I feel like that all through my life. I've grown up and I was never the fastest, I was never the strongest, I was never the best on my sports team, and I love sports and always wanted to play. I was never the smartest in my class. I'm not even close to the smartest in my own family. Okay, like not even close. I wasn't the biggest or the strongest. I was always jealous of the people who seemed like they had it all. You know what I'm talking about? The trifecta, the people you're like, oh, you're the captain of the football team. Oh, you're the star on the basketball team, and you were voted prom king? Yeah, love you. You know what I mean? Like, you ever notice people like that where it's just like, it seems like they're good looking, they make a lot of money, they have the perfect life, and I feel like the guy who got 1 bag in life. You know what I mean? Like, I can't sing that well, I can't dance that well, this is what I've always felt in life. I mean, I look at some people, some of you guys are just experts at something, and I've always described myself as a jack of all, master of none, right? I'm a jack of many trades. Like, I can do a little bit, and I know a little bit about everything, but I don't know a lot about anything, right? Like, I've always felt that way about myself, and maybe you have too. I don't know, anybody else feel like a 1 bag type of person in this place? Okay, if you don't have your hand up, we hate you, okay? You're so cool, you're the 5 bagger. All right, whatever. But I think it's possible that we only feel that way about the story because of what we do, which is I always compare my inadequacies with everybody else's accomplishments. I'm always looking at the things that I'm not good at doing and comparing it with what he or she can do really well. And social media has not made life any better in this regard, where all we see is the curated and the perfect picture of what we don't measure up to. And so I feel like the 1 bag type of person. And yet, I wonder if we have placed in our society a disproportionate amount of value on money. Because we look at these and we go, how unfair for the master to give one guy 5 bags of gold and one guy 1 bag of gold. And what I think we don't realize is that we actually miss what the master really gave them. Because the master wasn't just giving them bags of money. The master was actually placing on them an expectation to do something with it. Can I remind us all of the story? The master entrusted it to them, but didn't give it to them. In other words, it wasn't their money, it was his, until he comes back. I'm entrusting you to do something with it, but it's not yours. So what was the master really giving them? He was actually giving them the weight of responsibility that goes with managing that. And I think a lot of times, if I could just say this, when it comes to the kingdom of heaven versus the kingdom of earth, we often get things backwards. We often kind of put value on money versus other things. But I actually think that it is quite possible that we've got this flipped upside down. See, Jesus was always trying to show us this. That's why he said, if you want to be first in the kingdom of God, you're actually going to be last in this world. If you want to be the best, the greatest, you're going to have to be a servant of others. In other words, everything's upside down. And so maybe if I could just convince you to see it this way, I wonder if the guy who got 1 bag actually got something of greater value than the guy who got 5 bags or the guy who got 2 bags. You say, no, that don't make sense. And I would say this. The less you have of something, the more valuable it is to you. Right? The less you have of something, like the more valuable it is. The last piece of pie is the most coveted one. That's the one we're gonna fight for. That's the one we're fighting for. You wanna split it? No, I don't wanna split it. We'll fight for it, right? When you know that you have less time, like, I don't know what, but I recognized something recently, and that is I probably have less days in front of me than I do behind me. And that is a sobering awareness, where all of a sudden you realize that time is precious and valuable. And I think sometimes we get this wrong. I think maybe the guy who got 1 bag got something of greater value. Let me give you a great example of this. I am a bit of a car enthusiast. You probably know that. I love, well, let me just say, I don't love all cars. I love fast, exotic sports cars. That's what I really love. The stuff I can't afford. That's what I really, really do love. And I was thinking about cars, and I thought, here's a great way for us to understand, I think, what Jesus is saying. The car that is the most, can I say, prolific, the car that is the most abundant in the world is the Toyota Corolla. Okay, how many of you have a Toyota Corolla? Raise your hand if you do. Okay, a few people have Toyota Corollas. Probably a great car, right? Okay, get a lot of gas mileage and all that, Toyota Corolla. We're gonna put a picture of one. This is the creme de la creme of cars. You know why? Because over 55 million of these have been produced, which makes it the #1 car in the world. I bet you want a Toyota Corolla. Here's the thing about Toyota Corollas. Probably great cars, because Toyotas make good cars and they get good gas mileage, so probably really reliable. But they don't actually hold the highest value of cars, just because we have the most of them. In fact, you can buy a new one for about $25,000, right, for a Toyota Corolla. So if you're looking for a car, Toyota Corolla could be yours. But if you want something of greater value, you might want to go with a Bugatti Chiron. I just need a moment. That's a beautiful car. Here's the thing about this hand-built, French-made luxury sports car. Only 500 of these have ever been made. They're done making them. 500 of them have been made. You can't buy a new one if you wanted one. And I was thinking about it, and then I woke up from my dream and realized I can't afford one of these. Only 500 ever built, and the average price of a new one, when you could buy it, was $3.3 million. So if you got an extra $3.5 million, I don't know what it would cost to get you one today, but notice this, there's less of them. But the value, the cost of them is even greater. Now, let's compare that with a 1963 Ferrari GTO. Anybody here like classic sports cars? Anybody like some classic stuff? You're like, I'll take the classic one. This is special because Ferrari only made this particular sports car for about 2 years in the 60s. And they only produced 36 of them. This particular one, this exact one that you're looking at a photo of, is chassis number 4153 GT. This is a 1963. And this particular Ferrari is unique because it won the 1964 Tour de France. That was not a bike race at the time, it was a car race. 1964 Tour de France, which makes this one of 36. And when this car went to auction in 2018, someone paid over $70 million for this one car. Why? Because it's the only one like it in the world. My point is this: the less you have of something, the more valuable it is. And if I could just tell you what you only have one of, that it makes it incredibly valuable, it is your life. Can I say something about you? You are one of one. Matter of fact, you're 1 out of 8 billion still living on this planet today. And the breath you have in your lungs, the number of birthdays that you have left to celebrate, make you incredibly unique. And what God has put inside of you, the gifts, the abilities, the talents, the things that He has put specifically in you, nobody else in this world has. It is the one thing that God has entrusted to you. And so let me say it this way. Your life is God's gift to you. What you do with it is your gift to the world. See, most people think what you do with it is your gift back to God. No, I don't see it that way. Your life is God's gift to you. What you do with it is your gift to the world. What are you doing? This is what James is saying. And now this is a parable of what Jesus is saying. God has entrusted you with something that He intends for you to do in this life. The question is, what are you going to do with the one life that He's given to you? Now, the guy who got 5 bags, Jesus tells us that he went and worked it. I don't know exactly what that means, but my guess is he invested it, or maybe he bought some businesses and he turned money, and he turned the 5 bags into 10. He doubled the master's investment. The guy who had 2 bags did the same thing. He went and worked it. He put it to work. He risked it, and he turned it into 4. And then eventually, the master was coming back. When the master came back, the guy with 5 ran up to him and said, "Look, here's 10. The master was really elated. And then the guy with 2 said, "Look, I've doubled it too. Here's 4. And here's what the master said in reply. Let me read this to you. Verse 23, his master replied, "Well done, good and faithful servant. You've been faithful with a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Come and share in your master's happiness." Can I just tell you, the beautiful thing about using your life to do good for others is that it creates a reward that you get to be part of. It wasn't just like, hey, here's what I did with it's yours. And the master says, that's great, now you get to enjoy it. Can I just tell you that when you live your life with intention and purpose, where you honor God, you serve God, you follow God, and then you reap the benefits of it, you get to enjoy that life. There's something liberating about living your life for God and experiencing the blessing of God in return, and then getting to live and enjoy in that reward. Now, if you haven't picked up on the metaphor yet, let me explain it to you. The master in this story is God. Jesus is saying, hey, I want you to understand, the master, really Jesus. He's saying, I'm the master. The servants, well, that's us. That's you and me. And this isn't really about money. This is about something that is far more important to God than money. This is what God has put inside of you. In other words, Jesus says that God created you and He's entrusted into you. He's given you opportunities and gifts and skills and abilities, and He's put you in a specific time in human history so that you can do something good with the life God's given to you. That's what the story is about. And we can look at others and go, it's not fair. But God will never call you to account for what He's given somebody else. But He will one day call us to account. There is a time, Jesus says, where we are going to meet God, where all of a sudden there's the question, what did you do with the life I gave you? Now, the guy who got 1 bag, well, he did something different with it. We know that he buried it. So when the master showed up, this is what he says. The master says in verse 24, it says, then the man who had received 1 bag of gold, he came and he said, Master, he said, I I knew that you're a hard man, harvesting where you have not sown and gathering where you have not scattered seed. He says, so I was what? Everybody say it. I was afraid. And I went out and hid your gold in the ground. See, here is what belongs to you. The guy who had one bag knew that there was an expectation on what the master had given him. But fear caused him to bury it, to sit on it, to hide it. And if we're not careful, fear will lead us to do the same thing with what God has given us. Fear will cause us to live a stingy life, not being generous, not supporting others, not giving to God's work in our community. Fear will cause us. Why? Because we think we won't have enough for ourselves, and we end up living a very small life. Fear will cause us to miss some of life's greatest opportunities that maybe God puts in front of us because we might fail. Fear will cause us to sometimes be stuck in life and not actually risk anything, choosing to live a very safe life. Now, we don't know what the servant's fear was. We're not told specifically, but it seems he was probably either afraid of disappointing the master. He was afraid of letting him down. He was afraid of losing what his master had entrusted to him. And because of it, he did nothing with it. I don't want to lose any more time in my life with the thought that I didn't do everything I could with what God entrusted me with. And fear will be the one thing that will paralyze us in life from taking any risk, from doing something bold, from being courageous, keep us from actually living the life that God created us to live. And when I think about my own journey with fear, and I've had so many moments where it's been really scary to take a next step that God's called me to take. Obviously, I wrote a book called Scary Faith about it, so I understand that. But I'll be honest, in my life, I haven't really been afraid of disappointing God as much as I'm afraid of feeling like a disappointment to others. This is just me, I haven't really been afraid of failing God as much as I'm afraid of being seen as a failure. And it's a really scary thing whenever you put yourself out there to whatever God's called you to do. It's a scary thing to write a book and put it out there and not know if it's gonna mean anything or if it'll be helpful or there's fear involved when God calls us to follow him into whatever he calls us to do. But here's the thing. I'm convinced, even from this story, that maybe we only fail God when we do nothing. I think we only fail God when we do nothing. Because that's what the master says in this story. In verse 26, it says, his master replied, this was to the guy who had one bag and hid it, you wicked, lazy servant. So you knew that I harvest where I have not sown and gather where I have not scattered seed. Well, then you should have put my money on deposit with the bankers, so that when I returned, I would have received it back with interest. So take the bag of gold from him and give it to the one who has 10 bags. You know what he's really saying? He's saying, if you won't do anything with what I have given to you, I will give it to someone else. How sobering is it to think that maybe God has a unique purpose and intention for your life and for my life? But if fear is our response and we will not step into it, that God will say, fine, if you're not going to, I'll give it to someone else. If you're not gonna try to live a life where you serve others and do good, as James would say, then I'm gonna just give what I have to somebody else. I don't know about you, but I don't wanna be that guy. I don't wanna be the guy who's so afraid to never take a step of faith and risk what God has called me to do. Because here's what I'm convinced, when it comes to the one life that we've been given, we either work it or we waste it. There's no in between. There's no just floating through life. I think that's what we do a lot of times in America. We make life about ourselves. I feel the tension of this. To build my own life, build my own kingdom, build my own empire, build my own success, build my own this. But I don't know if it's, and then I don't mean for this to be heavy, but it's like James and Jesus, like brothers. It's almost like they get together to remind us that one day all of us, if we are a follower of Jesus, that we will give an account for the life that we led. That's not a scary or meant to be a frightening thing or a judgmental thing. It's really meant to be a call to like use the one thing that he's given you. Use the gift that he has given you. I don't know what he's putting you to do. Here's what I know. For most of you, it's not probably to start a church. You don't need to do that unless God specifically tells you to. It's not to go and quit your job tomorrow and plan to go on the mission field halfway around the world. It may not be that. It may not be to start a company or start a nonprofit or to this. It may not look like that. But I believe that we will spend our lives running in circles, time passing us by, if we never stop and we ask God, what is the intention for my life? What did you create me to do, God? What do you want me to do? How can I serve others? James would say, if you know the good you ought to do and you don't do it, it's actually a sin. That we're called to something higher and to live with intention. And I really know this, that when I am not living with intention, here's what I'm doing. I'm just winging it. I'm just, I don't know. If they'll pay me more, I'll go there. If I can build a bigger house, then I will. What if I don't need it? But what if I can? If I don't have anything creating direction and focus for my life, if I don't have a purpose or meaning that I'm running after, then I will meander aimlessly through life and may miss the most important thing that God's called me to do. Live with intention. Live on purpose. I think the greatest tragedy is not failing. I think it's to do nothing. It's to have my life pass me by. And to think I didn't give my best to loving others, serving others, advancing God's kingdom any way, shape, or form he asked me to. Why don't you stand up with me if you would today as we close. I know some of you might be here and you might even be processing, and I'm just praying that the Spirit of God is speaking to you and you're maybe thinking, I don't know where to start. I mean, good for you. You're a pastor and you feel like you have a calling and a purpose, and that's great. I don't even know where to start. I don't feel like I have any great gifts. I'm the guy with one bag. I'm the girl with one bag. I don't think I have any great talents. You don't want me to get on a platform with a microphone. You definitely don't want me to sing with a band. You don't want, I don't even know where to begin. Can I just encourage you? You can start right here in this community and serve others here. You can serve others right here. If you're not sure what to do, we'll help you figure out what God created you and shaped you to do. But there is so much meaning and purpose that you can find in a community like this. Like you could be where my wife is right now, which is teaching 3-year-olds about Jesus. And yes, it's a lot like corralling cats. She tells me of 3-year-olds, but then she sees glimmers of them understanding who Jesus is in their own way at 3. Can I just tell you how important that is to this grandfather who has a 2-year-old grandson? Like I used to always say, we're building this church, not for you, but we're building this church for your kids. Now I'm reaching an age where I'm going, we're not building this church for your kids, but for your grandkids. But there's so many opportunities. Like you can serve in middle school or high school, or be a part of a care ministry team, or do outreach that we do all the time. You can go on mission trips. You can serve in production. Like there's so many ways that you can just begin. Be generous with your time. Be generous with your money. Be generous with your gifts. Offer to help people. Be the kind of person that you know that God created you to be. Just do it. If you don't know where to begin, then let's just take a moment. Let's pray and let's invite God, because I think sometimes the best step to begin to build the future, the life that God's created you, is to start with surrender. I'd love for us to do that. Would you just bow your heads with me? Maybe close your eyes just in this moment of reflection. God, I pray that your Spirit right now is speaking to each and every one of us about the good that you call us to do, about the life that we're called to create. I thank you, God, that you give us options, you give us choice, you give us freedom. But even more, I'm thankful that you give us meaning and you give us purpose and something that we can build our lives around, and that is a foundation of Jesus. Lord, maybe there's some here today that they hear this and we're like, I want to move toward that. I don't even know where to begin and what it looks like. If that's you today, or maybe all of you, maybe you just feel like something that God is doing is stirring in your soul today, and you're saying, I want that kind of life, and I don't know where to begin. I'm going to tell you, I think it begins with surrender. For me, that journey started when I got to a place where I just said, God, use me however you can. Can I just tell you, the greatest ability that you have been given by God to use for his glory is availability. It's just saying, God, use me. God, take what you have put in me, the gifts, the experiences, the opportunities, and God, use me. I surrender my life to you and your purpose over me. If you're sensing that today, I just want to invite you in response. Would you feel comfortable? Lift your hands to heaven. Maybe just turn your palms up to God and you say, God, I want to know the intention for my life. I want to know the purpose that you created me for. God, I want to walk in it. I want to live the good life that you created me. The life that's not just for me, but is creating good for others. I want to give my life to you, God, in service, in holy service.
Hey, thank you so much for watching this message. I hope it encouraged you. It's inspiring you on your faith journey. If God did something through it, if maybe now you feel like, man, I need to make a decision, or I want to make a change in my life, we would love to know and be a part of that journey. If you want, you can just send us an email to hello@thex.church and let us know how we can continue to help you in your journey. And if you are inspired by it, I think other people you know might also be inspired by it. I just want to encourage you, take a few seconds right now and share this content with a friend or family member that you think it would help them. The last thing I just want to say is thank you to all of you who give generously to God through our church. See, it's the generosity of the hundreds and hundreds of families that pour into this ministry that enable us to continue to bring content like this to you and those around the world. And so if you're a part of that, thank you so much. And if you are encouraged and inspired and you want to be, I just want to invite you, you can go over to thex.church/give, and you can help us continue to take content like this to the world.